The 5 Points Gang, founded by Paolo Antonio Vaccarelli, was a criminal street gang of primarily Irish-American origins, based in the 5 Points of Lower Manhattan. They had a reputation for brutality, and in battles with rival gangs, they would often fight until one was dead. The gang would then gain more power and members by recruiting members from gangs such as the Dead Rabbits and Yos. The 5 Points Gang consisted of members who would later become the most powerful and prominent criminals in the history of the United States, including Johnny Torrio, Al Capone, and Lucky Luciano. Welcome back. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Past Crimes channel and leave a comment below to let us know what other past crimes you would like to hear about. The 5 Points was the area of Manhattan where 4 streets converged: Anthony, Cross, Orange, and Little Water. Mulberry was 1 street down from the 5 Points and was notorious for slum tenements. This area, which is now known as Chinatown, was located between Broadway and the Bowery. This district was considered the slum area, dating from the late 18th and early 19th centuries, populated by mostly poor English and Scots-Irish, with increasing waves of German, Welsh, and Irish refugees by the 1840s. There were numerous gambling dens and brothels in the 5 Points area, which was considered a dangerous destination where many people had been mugged, particularly at night. Charles Dickens, a famous British author, visited the area in 1842 and was shocked by the poor living conditions and substandard housing. Catholic immigrants faced ethnic prejudice and class discrimination from nativist white Anglo-Saxon Protestants prior to the Civil War. As a result of their low social status, many Irish immigrants formed local street gangs such as the Carryonians, 40 Thieves, and Shirt Tails, who soon all became criminals. These gangs began to disband shortly before the American Civil War, with remaining members joining powerful gangs such as the Dead Rabbits and the Yos. These Irish gangs' influence and numbers eventually began to dwindle. By the 1870s, a new wave of Italian and Eastern European Jewish immigrants had arrived. Criminal gangs of Irish, Jewish, and Italian criminals began competing for control of the territory, rackets, and illicit revenue. Eastman coin collectors, founded by Monk Eastman, had many Irish members before becoming predominantly Jewish. Paul Kelly, an Italian-American-born Paolo Antonio Vaccarelli, founded the 5 Points Gang, which was mostly made up of Italians at the time. The 5 Points Gang had a reputation for brutality, and they frequently fought to the death in battles with rival gangs. When Kelly recruited the remaining members of other 5 Points gangs, such as the Dead Rabbits and Yos, into his growing gang, the gang gained more power and members. As time passed, Jewish, Polish, and Eastern European immigrants were added to the ranks of the 5 Points Gang, making them even more powerful and influential. Al Capone came from the James Street Gang and later led the Chicago outfit. In his youth, Charles Lucky Luciano joined the 5 Points Gang and went on to become the country's most powerful criminal. Kelly and his associates saw the money to be made by supporting corrupt politicians in their election bids as the 5 Points Gang gained experience. The gang helped city officials of the Democratic Party political machine Tammany Hall retain power by threatening voters, falsifying voter lists, and stuffing ballot boxes. At the turn of the 20th century, the 5 Pointers' only rivals were Monk Eastman's gang. The rivals fought over a territory on Manhattan's Lower East Side. Eastman was shot in the stomach by a 5 Pointer in 1901, but he survived. In retaliation, one of his crew members killed a 5 Pointer. By 1903, the feud had erupted into open warfare between the two gangs. Kelly, Torrio, and 50 of the 5 Pointers were involved in a gun battle with Eastman's gang in one incident. The battle, which lasted several hours, forced city police to withdraw from the scene, while 3 men were killed and many were injured. When the police finally took control of the situation, they arrested Eastman, but he was only detained for a few hours. After Eastman swore his innocence, a Tammany-controlled judge released him. The general public was outraged by the street fighting. A Tammany Hall deputy named Tom Foley summoned Kelly and Eastman and informed them that if the border dispute was not resolved, neither would receive political protection. They restored peace for a short time, but violence flared up again within 2 months. Officials gathered the two leaders and had them challenge each other in a boxing match, with the winner's gang claiming the disputed territory. Hundreds of men from both sides gathered in the Bronx at an abandoned house. Kelly had been a boxer in his younger days and was expected to perform better in the early rounds, but Eastman was a larger man who fought fiercely. The fight lasted 2 hours, and both men had taken a lot of punishment by the end, but neither had been knocked out, so the match was declared a draw. The gang leaders then informed their men that the war was not over. It was at this moment Tammany Hall officials decided to support the 5 Points crew and withdraw any legal or political assistance for Eastman and his gang. Eastman was beaten unconscious by a police officer who had foiled a robbery in progress in 1904. Eastman was found guilty and sentenced to 10 years in Sing Sing prison in Ossining, New York. With Eastman imprisoned, the 5 Points gang had no viable rival for control of organized crime activities on the Lower East Side. Kelly's organization expanded into other parts of Manhattan and New Jersey during this time. The Eastman crew was largely overshadowed when Eastman's successor, Max Kit Twist Zwerbach, a former member of the 5 Points gang before defecting to the Eastman gang, was murdered in 1908 by 5 Points gang hitmen, allegedly by the orders of Paul Kelly. Kelly took a more professional approach to his gang's activities. At 57 Great Jones Street, he opened the New Brighton Athletic Club, a 2-story cafe and dance hall where he charmed socialites and other prominent citizens who frequented his club. His educated and sophisticated persona impressed many of New York's elite. In 1905, Paul Kelly was shot 3 times by 2 of his former lieutenants, James Biff Ellison and Pat Razor Riley, during a gun battle inside the New Brighton. After this incident, Tammany Hall pressure forced him to keep a low profile, while New York Police Commissioner William McAdoo closed the New Brighton to protect its socialite regulars. Kelly's dominance in the New York underworld began to wane after this failed assassination. Kelly and his gang, on the other hand, did not fade away. After closing the New Brighton, Kelly relocated his operations to the Italian immigrant communities of Harlem and Brooklyn, while maintaining ties to his old neighborhood by serving as vice president of the International Longshoremen's Association under his Americanized birth name, Paul Vaccarelli. Kelly was expelled from the ILA in 1919, but later rejoined it. He was appointed to a strike resolution commission with the support of Mayor John F. Hyland, which he brought to a close without achieving any concessions for the strikers. It is believed that Kelly became a labor racketeer, providing muscle in labor disputes during the 1920s. In 1936, Kelly died of natural causes. The Mafia gangs gradually took over the rackets and criminal activities previously controlled by the 5 Points gang. Former 5-pointers such as Torrio, Capone, Lansky, and Luciano became leaders of the new groups and expanded their operations on a national and international scale with the help of influential businessman and criminal genius Arnold Rothstein.